What's going on, everybody? I am the Burning Man. Crispy, extra fried, I've been called, actually. I earned that title. You know, a lot of people, they get names or whatever, but I earned it. And I earned it in an interesting way. See, what I thought was a good idea was getting caught on fire whenever I was 18 years old, fresh out of high school, young, dumb, full of cum, all that good stuff. And the upsetting part is all I have left is just this little bit on my hand where I get to kind of show off being the dumbest sack of shit you've ever seen in your life. But I don't feel it's fully my fault. You know? Like, I don't think it was all on me. Like, maybe 95%. But, like, there was an extra hot 5, we'll call it, that was on some other gentleman. And I think that now is the perfect time to fully explain this. See, I was 18 years old. It was my summer before I went to college. It was 3 weeks exactly before I started college. Me and a bunch of my buddies from high school decided we were going to get together and have a bonfire. And we did this a lot growing up. We would get together. We'd have a thing called Senior Sundays my whole senior year. We'd get together. We'd have bonfires. We'd hang out. And it was a nice, like, excuse. So we decided we were going to have kind of like, not really a last hurrah, but like one of the last big ones. You know, I had a buddy going in the military, buddies going to college, all this stuff. So I decided that we were going to have this big bonfire, but we always had this ongoing problem of not having lighter fluid or not having shit to light on fire. So we were constantly, like, just cutting down trees that we could find and, like, dragging them over to the fire pit and stuff like that. And this time I'd gotten really lucky because I had been gone for a few months, and my dad, while I was gone, went and did all this, like, brush cleanup. He made this big pile, and he told me whenever I got back, he's like, hey, man, you got to go and get all your dumbass buddies together and have one of those fires again. I said, well, sure. You know, why not? Like, if they're just going to go and give me all the materials, we're halfway to a good time. So I went, I met up with a buddy, and we'd been riding motorcycles, had a good old time. And then we went back, and we were getting ready to start up this bonfire. And one of my other buddies showed up. There's 3 of us then. We got me, and then E and J. And we were looking around and realized, even though this time someone else had properly prepared shit to burn for us, because we're 18, we still had not properly prepared the way to light it all on fire. You know, we had a lighter, because if you want to smoke something, you got to have one of those. But we're like, what kind of fluid could we get? And then we figured out, you know, we're here at my dad's shop. We went into his shop. We start looking around, and we find this nice little container full of mixed fuel. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, mixed fuel is a mix between oil and gas. It runs in 2-stroke engines. And we were like, well, that fucker will burn. So that's probably exactly what we need. So we got this mixed fuel, and my one buddy's a wild man, Jay. He jumped up and started throwing the fuel all over the fire and stuff, or all over the brush, and he got it up there and all this and that, and he poured this little bitty trail. Like, if it was a micro penis, or if it was a penis, it'd be a micro penis, I guess is how I'd want to say that. So he poured that kind of trail next to this giant, humongo brush pile. And then he goes, so who's going to light it? And me, being just intelligent enough, but clearly not enough, goes, well, this is my parents' property. If somebody's going to light it, I probably should, just in case anything were to happen. We are messing with fuel and stuff, you know, gas and oil, so that's not a great mix. But I was like, oh, I'll light it. It'll be all right. So I got out our little weed lighter and got down there and stuck out my hand, and I flicked the switch on the lighter. And the next thing I know, I'm sprinting across an open field in what my friends would call a ball of flames. And I had had a little bit of, like, you know, emergency training stuff of, like, if people get really hurt and stuff, like, not that long before. And I was like, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to get into a shower. You need to go get cool water on you, not cold. Try to get some of that burn away. So thankfully, my buddy E's house was pretty close. So we ran over, and he had burnt his legs because he was standing by me and he was wearing shorts. And I had burnt a lot of me. And I go, all right, man, I'm going to get in the shower. You should probably do the same thing. And I take off and I get into this nice 3-story house's downstairs shower. And I start just trying to not freak out completely as I try to fight going into full-on shock and dying on the bathroom floor. And by this time, a lot of the other bonfire guests had started arriving, started showing up. And they go, where is everyone? Well, Jay was still over there, and he's like, oh, Eric burned himself. So he's over at E's house trying to get cleaned up. So I'm still in the shower, and all of a sudden I just start hearing commotion, you know, all these people talking and stuff. And all of a sudden one of my buddies comes in, and he's like, hey, man, how you doing in there? And I'm like, not the best. You know, haven't been doing great. I have skin all over this bathroom. His mother told me that bathroom stunk like burnt skin for a month and a half after that. And she let me come back to their house. That's what a good woman she is. I ruined a bathroom in not the shitting way like people usually do. I finally go and I'm like, all right, I think I'm chilled out enough. I'm still full on freaking out, but playing it 18-year-old cool. You know, we all remember that. And I get out, and then there's a herd of us 18-year-olds hanging out, you know? A gaggle, you might say. A real clusterfuck of us. And we're sitting there, and we're like, well, what do we do? I'm like, well, I should probably go to the hospital. You know, I'm pretty fucked up. I don't have eyebrows. My beard got burnt all the way down to my face. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should go to the hospital. And that time I lift up my arm and I kind of put it against the door frame I'm standing by. And one of the other guys that showed up goes, hey man, I think you need to go to the hospital. And I go, why is that? And he just points, and I look underneath my arm, and there's a giant skin bubble that's already formed on the underside of my arm. And I go, fuck yeah, I think we should probably go to the hospital. Now, mind you, I didn't really have dumb friends. You know, I got friends that are doing fairly well for themselves these days. Some would say that we were a fairly intelligent bunch. Now, just remember that one of my friends said it was like Eric was in a fireball. Not that long before, no one had called a parent, 911. No one even called 311, okay? Which I think would have been, they would have told them to call the 9 number. So we start deciding that since my other buddy's legs are burnt, and a bunch of me is, that he should probably drive me to the hospital. Now, mind you, I lived in a town in the middle of nowhere in Missouri. It was at least 45 minutes to an hour to the closest hospital. So our plan is we were going to load up in his mom's car because it had the best AC I remember us discussing and deciding that it had the best AC. So we would take her car. That way it wouldn't hurt, you know. And just about that time, my phone rings, and it's my mom calling me. And I go, well, hello, dear sweet mother. How are you? And she goes, is everything okay? And I go, well, not really. I burnt myself a little bit. Now, mind you, this little bit ended up being my face, neck, arms, and part of my legs. That was my little bit that was burnt. And she goes, where are you? I say, I'm at E's house. She says, I'll be there in a minute. And I go, dang it, now I'm going to freak her out. You don't want to worry your mom, that's rude. So she gets there. There's a gaggle of 18-year-olds still. All dudes, also, by the way. If one woman would have shown up, somebody would have called the ambulance by now. My mom pulls up. My mom was a nurse. And she looks at me and goes, get in the car right now. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like trying to explain what happens. And she just turns around and goes, get in the car. And I go, well, that's not great. Because everyone knows the second your mom gets serious about something, especially if you're injured, it's bad. So I get in the car like a good little 18-year-old boy. And my mom starts driving. I notice we're not heading towards the hospital. We're heading towards home. And I go, phew, it's not as bad as I thought. It could have been worse. Until all of a sudden, my mom turns the steering wheel very quick and whips into the ambulance station. And I go, uh-oh, once again, this isn't good. My mom doesn't say a word to me, just jumps out of the car and goes inside. And I go, well, I bet we're here about me. You know, I don't think we're just stopping in to pick something up. So I was like, well, what I should do is probably follow her in. So I get out of the car and I start walking in. And I was walking like this because I was burnt. And I walk in and I can hear her talking to the ambulance driver. And they, what? Huh? What's going on? Who? Huh? Very nonchalant. I turn the corner. They make eye contact with me, go white, and go, get in the ambulance now. I once again said, oh, this is worse than I thought. They pile me in the ambulance as fast as they can, as I'm barefoot, only wearing sweatpants that weren't mine, and burnt like a bitch. And I get in the ambulance, and I hear them tell my mom, don't worry, we're going to pick up this other guy. The guy was like Chris or Chad or David. You pick his name, okay? And I was like, well, that's also not good. They're calling for backup, and they're the professionals. I don't know if I like that a lot. And all of a sudden, they pull off. I'm in the ambulance. We're driving down the road, and they pull off to the side of the road. And they go, and they're like, don't worry, we're getting the other guy. And I'm like, yep, we really are calling in reinforcements. This is concerning, you know? And he gets in, and he sits down next to me, and he goes, hey, buddy, don't worry. If you stop breathing, I'll make sure you can breathe. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I had pretty strong feelings that that meant something was going through my neck or in another part of me that I didn't want punctured. So I just told him, hey, we're good. I can breathe. Don't stab me, all right? And they're giving me drugs, and all this and that, and how you doing? Still on fire, you know. Still burnt. All right, how you feeling? Still hurt? Sure do. Give me more drugs. We get to the hospital. They pull up. A team of nurses and doctors pretty well meet us at the door. I was called in on like a stage 3 burn victim. So they take me into this room. There's somewhere about what felt like 45 doctors in this room. There was a real gaggle of them too. However, unlike the last gaggle I was around, they were doing something. And they go, and they're trying to move me from one cart to another because the ambulance is like, give us that shit back. We had this gross little burnt boy on it. So they take it, and they're trying to move me. And I'm like, well, I'm helpful. I'll move myself. So I start moving. Have you ever heard a room full of doctors scream no at once? It's terrifying. You're like, wrong hole, you know? Didn't mean to do that. They put me under. They do all their magical 21st century doctor jazz. I wake up. Still hurt. But it's been some time. I'm in a hospital bed. And my parents are there. And I'm like, oh, that's nice that I was able to concern people. They had called the whole family. They thought I was going to die. You ever been the center of a death story, you know, and lived? It's great. They take me home, get the bandages removed, have a grand old time. I heal up fine. Went to college on time. Didn't make any use of that. But years later, I found out that that whole time I was in the hospital, just sitting in the hospital bed, like 5 people had came to visit me. And as the little crispy creature I was, I conveyed to them a very apparently important and heartfelt message because I said it to every single person that came in. I apparently told them multiples of times. And I didn't really lay up. And my mom just told me this not real long ago. And I was like, how insightful. How important. And the message that I conveyed to all these worried souls that came to visit me during my time in the hospital was, you know, they say drugs are bad, but these drugs feel really good. I want more of these drugs. I've been Eric Biggs. Check me out on Instagram, ericbiggscomedy.com. Love you guys.